Tonight, on Closer Look, a Collingwood man has been sentenced to 15 months behind bars for defrauding 18 victims out of tens of thousands of dollars for hockey and concert tickets that simply never existed. Buried Today court reporter Peter Robinson has been covering this story and joins us tonight with the latest. Peter, let's start with the scam itself that Todd Guthrie was pulling. What was he selling and how was he pulling it off? Maybe give an example or two if you can.
Yeah, pretty straightforward scam, reaching out to friends and family at first to say that he had NHL All-Star tickets that was taking place in January of 2024 in Toronto. To provide you with a couple of examples, he actually went to a family barbecue in order to take money off somebody they had known for 30 years. And when he got there, the victim informed me that her extended family was there, including her father, and he tacked on more imaginary tickets and took more money. So, and then later he branched out a bit, both to the internet and postings and stuff, but he also, he sold and the victims were mostly all around Simcoe County. They weren't just limited to Collingwood or Barrie. He ripped off a local bar owner in Barrie who was trying to find tickets in order to fulfill contest winners. And she also tried to buy some concert tickets that didn't exist for Morgan Wallen. So that was pretty typical. And there was 18 victims. And really, it kind of speaks for itself.
Now, we understand, Peter, that although he pled to $30,000, the total fraud was close to $100,000. Was there any indication in court about how Guthrie spent the money he defrauded from his victims, especially considering the restitution order?
Yeah, so the restitution order is only for 30, and we were able to confirm at least twice that, and it was pretty clear that it was even more than that, closer to $100,000. As for how he spent his money, his lawyer referenced a gambling addiction. A couple different police sources told us that before it was coming to court, and we found out right before the sentencing that he had been spotted a few times or several times in Wasaga Casino, which incidentally had just opened a couple years ago, not far from Collingwood.
Now, this isn't the first time that Todd Guthrie has found himself in this position. In fact, he has two similar previous convictions.
Yeah, there's a lot of sad elements to this case, but I found the most frustrating was to sit in court and hear that he had already had a fraud over $5,000 of fraud under conviction from 10 years ago. So obviously these poor people, had they known that, they wouldn't have forwarded the money.
Now, the judge in this case, Ontario Court Justice Angela McLeod, had some pretty strong words for Guthrie at sentencing. What did she say?
Yeah, she was fantastic. She wears these trademark red rim glasses, and it's actually a glass bay window behind her on the bench, so you could look out to Blue Mountain off in the distance and Georgian Bay. It was just a weird juxtaposition, and she just said, "Look, you weren't just ripping people off, to use her term, baskets of apples. That you were emotionally ripping them off for a piece of Canadian culture," obviously in reference to the connection that we all have to hockey, or most of us have to hockey, and then later she issued kind of a warning to future victims that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, and that people like Todd Guthrie, their word is not worth anything.
Now, what about Guthrie's victims? Any present in the courtroom? And if so, what did they have to say about the 15-month sentence?
Yeah, another frustrating thing about the Canadian court system is it doesn't really give the victims much notice or much opportunity. A few of them told me that they simply couldn't make it because they couldn't miss work. A few logged in via video, but in terms of actual victims, there was only 2 in the courtroom when he was sentenced. Now,
this isn't the only ticket scam that's been on your radar, Peter. What else are you digging into?
We have been tipped off. Well, first of all, there's a case that I'm less familiar with, actually in Collingwood, of a woman who has been is accused of selling fraudulent airline tickets. She said she had a connection to Air Canada. We'll see how that case plays out. But there's a much bigger potential case brewing in Barrie with victims all around the city and beyond. More than $250,000. A victim, or alleged victim, has forwarded me an Excel file that shows all the transactions. And this scheme is more a classic Ponzi scheme, and in that the perpetrator has sold tickets to people. He hasn't delivered anywhere near what he was supposed to, but he's clearly been trying to sell them to victims further on the line in order to fulfill orders before. So the classic Ponzi scheme. And those people have been encouraged, quote unquote, not to go to police because the perpetrator's father is going to try and make do and make these people whole. But as it turns out, the father, to show you that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, he is a convicted fraudster. So we'll see how that plays out. I have a sense that the Barrie Police Force is waiting in order to lay charges so that there's it can come to court quicker and you can avoid a constitutional or charter challenge for delay getting to trial.
Peter, you mentioned a few moments ago, too good to be true. Is it really what this is all about? Is it a case of if it sounds too good to be true, it generally is?
Yeah, a wise person, somebody much smarter than me, once told me that the best deals are the ones where both sides feel a little bit ripped off. And what I mean by that is you're buying a commodity, right? So market forces are at play. Hockey tickets, Leaf tickets, NHL All-Star tickets, concert tickets, whatever. A legitimate dealer or a seller is going to get what the market will bear. So you're going to pay through the nose for tickets on the secondary market. You just have to accept the fact that that's what you have to pay and make a decision whether you can afford it or whether you think it's worth it. I recently just tried to get tickets for Mumford & Sons, and it took almost $1,000 just to get in the building to take my son. There was just no way I was going to do that at Massey Hall. So it's just a reality of market forces, and legitimate websites, legitimate sellers, they hate guys like Todd Guthrie because it's bad for business.
And certainly the most extreme case we've seen recently is Taylor Swift in the Eras Tour.
Yeah, I meant to reference that earlier. It's like what McLeod said. She wasn't referring to Taylor Swift, but these criminals, they just play on people's emotions. And fraud is unique because the victims actually play a part in their own victimhood because they're paying, and then they put a police in a position where they look to they naturally want to get their money back, but the police really at that point, it's just about laying charges and stopping and punishing the victim. The police have no power to get the money back. It's a judge that issues a restitution order, and oftentimes those restitution orders are not worth the paper they're printed on because the money's been long spent. So it's a terrible situation.
It certainly is. There's Peter Robinson from Barrie Today on tonight's Closer Look.